partner at a firm here in town. And I'm really happy that there's this many people that are actually engaged in talking tax, and it's pretty exciting for me. I spent a lot of time reviewing these proposals and going through the actual legislation and then looking at the options, I guess, on the passive income side. And what's really bothering me, in my perspective, dealing with clients, talking to clients who are starting out businesses, people who are retiring, is the uncertainty. There's so much uncertainty out there right now, and with the proposals that were actually legislated, and there are serious errors in their new anti-avoidance provisions. These are catching transactions that even I think finance this week admitted that they weren't trying to catch. So there hasn't been a lot of thought put towards this consultation period. Hasn't been there. And then when we look at the uncertainty, people are retiring and looking at their passive incomes. There's a note in the consultation paper saying there will be some grandfathering. Well, to someone who's worked their entire career, a note saying there's going to be some grandfathering on your entire investment, your entire retirement savings, that there shows that there's a little bit of a lack of understanding of what people are actually putting into their small businesses. And as a young professional working through here, I look at the options that I have for clients, and right now there's so much uncertainty, and I'm seeing people put projects on hold. They don't know exactly where they're going to be in a year from now or 2 years from now. They don't know how to deploy their cash, and they're not sure if they should be deploying their cash within their corporations. So the uncertainty really is bothering me as a tax professional. And I know the reasonability test, and Chris had mentioned earlier, there are some other sections within the Act. The foreign affiliate has a section, talks about reasonability. Those are mostly for multinationals who have entire accounting departments. Small businesses don't have that kind of resource, and putting in the complexity of the rules going through reasonability on split income to pay your spouse, I don't see how that's reasonable, and that's too much of a burden on small business. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ron Wright, and actually we're a small business owner, and we have been for many years actually. We were in Kamloops for a number of years, employing a number of people, and now we backed off, and we still have some commercial properties, and we're in the process of turning some of this over to our sons. In fact, some of them already have shares in the company, and actually White Kennedy are looking after some of our affairs as well. And we've always tried to run a clean business. It's something that's just the way we need to do it. And I feel like I just don't like the impression they're putting down on us. In any case, we're gradually handing these over to some of the shares over to our sons. And I think we've already done part of it, and I think we're probably going to hold off until after another election, actually, before we handle any more, because if I give each of them, say, $5,000 for shares, whatever it may be, I have to account for all of that, which is no problem. I don't mind accounting for it, but I don't want to be heavily taxed. When time comes, my wife and I want to totally back out of the business. It's commercial buildings, and they're not cheap, and so taxes are going to be tremendous, and whether they may even have to sell it, at least sell portions of it, just to pay the tax so they can come into their hands. It's not a good scene, and it bothers me that after we spent many years in Kamloops and in here employing people and taking the risk, and we've really taken the risk. There are times we've been near bankrupt. It's just, well, like the gentleman said here, that's sweat and tears, and my wife stayed with me through all those things. She still has. I mean, we've been married 56 years, and so. But anyway, I admire her for weathering the storms, and they have been difficult at times. Okay. Now I have mutual funds, and we're talking about we've put it aside in case one of our buildings needs a new roof. It could be $100,000 roof. okay? And these things you need to have when you're in business. You want a reserve there, and this mutual fund, like it was said, that could be taxed at a horrendous rate. So I'm thinking of taking out a shareholder's loan, put the company perhaps in some debt to take that out. It's in my hands. I don't know whether that's wise or not. We're actually talking more. But in any case, it won't be in the company. It's ours to take out, tax-free. We've earned it. We put money in. This is early money that we put in. We put loans on our house to get all this going. So really, in effect, there's an entitlement there. And so it's a difficult thing at this stage. A lot of things, I'm going to sit on my hands in a lot of this, so I have to. I can't go and sell anything off because I think there's so many gray areas right now, as was just mentioned, that I think we'll just hold off a little bit, but I'm sure tempted to clean up the shareholders' loan. Just a matter of interest. I don't know whether that's wise, but we actually talked to Darrow on this, and so we're not sure he's with White Kennedy. So anyway, I'm concerned about these new taxes. It's very unfair to people of many of you and all others in the, I belong to the Penticton Industrial Development Association too, and it's a big concern. A lot of people love their dollars. Thank you.
So let's just give a nice round of applause to everyone who contributed. And I'm sure that the people that spoke also appreciate how everyone listened, because you certainly could feel the, in some cases the anger, in other cases the fear, because they worked so hard. And anyway, I just appreciate you sharing that. Did anyone have any questions of me before we start to wrap up, and then we can still mill around and, yes, let's start with Ron.
I have one question.
Yeah.
What's the background of our finance minister? I really don't know.
So in addition to being an executive at Memorial Chappelle, he also served as the chair for the C.D. Howe Institute. So very established in Toronto, long-standing Canadian family. I think he's third generation from it. That being said, is that you can go and see his submission to the Conflict of Interest Ethics Commission, because there's rules about what assets you can own in what form. So, and just so you know, I'm just going to say this: there's many things that we may not appreciate sometimes in our politics. One of the things is when it comes to money and it comes to disclosure, we have a very solid system. And sometimes it seems like a real pain in the butt to keep up with all the paperwork. But one thing is we have very good disclosure laws, and also for lobbying as well. So you could type my name, you could put Conflict of Interest Commissioner submission, it'll give you all the information there, or you can type my name, Lobbying Commissioner, it'll say everyone who's come and saw me. And I think that kind of transparency is really, really helpful for people. It even says what the meeting was about. And the great part about that is that you can phone me up and ask me questions. Now, some people say that level of scrutiny, do we need it? I think it's good. I think it's so that if people have concerns, they know that it's there, they can access it. Now with the internet, it's amazing. But, okay, you had a question, sir.
You're in Ottawa, you're in Western Periods, you talk to a lot of people from the other side. Do you think you'll get a lot of support from the NDP? Do you think are cracks starting to appear?
So definitely cracks are appearing. I've spoken to people, tax experts from right across the country that have sent out submissions to all members of Parliament, and they will often get phone calls from those members, particularly some Liberals. And the chair of my committee, the Finance Committee, Wayne Easter, who's a good man, a former minister, served in the Chrétien and Martin governments, I believe. And he's expressed concerns with how this was rolled out. It's from Prince Edward Island. In fact, the Premier of Prince Edward Island, who's also a Liberal, has spoken out the need for these changes because they have concerns. Because again, there's also what gets applied at the federal level also gets applied at the provincial level. So there's a lot of integration there. So they're quite concerned with some of the effects. Absolutely. Now, I am going to I'm just going to answer questions first, and then I'm going to go to my wrap-up, because Jason brought up a very good point, and so did Marshall, and I'd like to make sure I address some of the things. Yes, sir,
I
please.
just wondered, I heard some rumblings about liberals going against this motion. How many of them are there, and is there a possibility that we could get a confidence vote, something along that line?
Okay, so there's 7 that have made concerning statements, like I am concerned, and often it's about the language that's been used, and I think everyone knows. First of all, I've said this to the Minister of Finance, I've said it to the Minister of Small Business, that Canadian entrepreneurs need to hear that they're respected and wanted and needed in this country. Okay, so I think the government, even the finance minister now, has started talking about advantages versus loopholes, because even he has had probably his one side of him torn off and the other side torn off, because again, savings and investments in business is caked in. It's a feature of the system. It's not a loophole. Many people have been said to me, Dan, I didn't know that death was a loophole. There's been a lot of, maybe it's not as funny as I thought of it. But it is interesting though when we talked, when Roland had mentioned that how a spouse, like many partners, it is a partnership. But one tax expert pointed out to me, Dan, if a spouse left their partner, automatically 50% of the company, 50% of the assets, 50% of the income. And yet, when we talk about a small business situation, and we also, and this is the other part you mentioned, is that oftentimes, and by the way, how many people have ever said this in this room? My business is my pension.
No.
Okay, so a lot of people have said that. And so the thing is that if your business is your pension, but it's not a real pension in terms of like an IPP or an RSP or whatnot. And so what ends up happening is that when you get older, we allow people to pension income split. All you have to be is age 65 and have a partner. And they can income split for pension income. But again, that won't be allowed for business owners. And I think that that's something the government really needs to take a look at. Anyway, but is there any other questions? Because I want to make sure I'm being accountable to as many people as possible. Yes, sir.
Just one more, what's Bill Morneau's real purpose for doing what he's doing?
Well, I was going to mention that in my wrap up. We'll just start there. Because it's a good, no, that's a great question. So the old saying, if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. So in this case, we've heard from a number of different people who made reference that there's a lot of spending going on. Now that the opinions have changed, the economy seems to have been doing better, so therefore you're going to take the foot off the gas as far as spending. No, that's not their plan. There's no plan to balance the books. There's no plan. In fact, the Department of Finance has projected we won't have a balanced budget until 2050. So the kids that are just going to be graduating will be 50-something, by the time they get to a balanced budget, if it's left on its own. That's the great thing about politics, though. If you get, someone who knows what they're doing in there, they can make changes. But in regards to this, I just want... In regards to this, the one thing I think that we all understand is our demographics. We all have parents and grandparents. We know that there's going to be the largest transition of wealth ever. And it seems to me that this has been pointed out to the government through finance, where they say, you know what, this is a good way to be part of that. And so they've introduced some draft legislation around the capital gains stripping. By the way, the capital gains stripping doesn't just qualify if you die or if you transition you're in the middle of transitioning your business to a family member or someone that's not at arm's length. It also relates to if you leave the country. And so right now we have the lowest business investments we've seen since 1981. We have the lowest amount of foreign direct investment coming in here. And now I'm very concerned, not just that government's trying to grab more, it's that this uncertainty that the government has injected into our economy. Because if Canadians can't get excited, if Canadians don't see the opportunity, if Canadians don't say, I'm willing to invest my money in my dream, in my community, in my economy, then how can we expect anyone else? We just can't. So again, someone asked, what do we do about it? I think it was Jason specifically said, what can we do? Will they listen? Well, and you asked, sir, about the confidence vote. So first of all, the Liberals committed in the last election that all their caucuses would always vote. They would say, we're only going to whip votes if it's a confidence vote, a budgetary matter, or if it's a charter issue, or if it's an electoral platform. So you have 3 out of 4 there. Because the government will say, we ran on this. But they also ran on getting back to balanced budgets by 2019. It would be limited to $10 billion a year, and that they would run an open joint striker program competition, and of course electoral reform. This was going to be the last election.
And it helped middle class.
And yeah, yes. So anyway, it's just interesting. But again, this would be, and what I am worried about, quite honestly, sir, is that even if all of the government members, that we would need 15 to vote against it, and we would also, of course, need the NDP and the Green, the Bloc as well, to vote against it. It would be, first of all, it would be a confidence vote. The NDP don't even have a leader. Okay, so there's some political practicalities there. But even with that, and many people may not be aware of this, is there's something called a Ways and Means motion. And a Ways and Means motion means the government puts it on the order paper, no vote, immediately CRA starts acting like it is ready to roll. And so what usually happens after the government then includes the same measures in a Budget Implementation Act, which by its very nature is a confidence vote. So my concern is that exactly what Jason said, that they don't listen. That they just say, if we do it now, let's slam it down and people might forget in 2 years. But when we go back to what Chris had said, that the power of one person talking to their neighbors, talking to their family members, Marshall was talking to his friends that have different political opinions, people are resonating with it because they just don't feel it's fair. And I used the reference the other day with the minister saying, it's kind of like Animal Farm. We all remember that. Some, what's the old saying? All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. In their own rules, they are treating private corporations, Canadian-controlled private corporations, differently than they are multinationals, different than they are with publicly traded companies. And for many farmers, when you suddenly make it more expensive to pass on your family farm to your family members, and some large corporation comes in and says, we want that land, and you're looking at half the tax rate. It is half. It's just over 20% right now. It'd be over 42% for most people if they sell to someone in their own family. So I really hope the government really looks at that. But getting back to your point, what can we do about it? The power of one. Social media is key. As soon as that October 2nd point is hit, we need to hit them with everything. And that means that we have to have more than just a few of us. We need to have other people speak out. And so if you know people, tell them exactly what you did wrong. Tell them how you invested in this community, how you've been paying for that. And then that's why you have that money set aside. Sir, tell them about what you've done with talk to your employees and let them know that that's how the system worked. And then if companies have less money in their corporation, they can't weather storms like we saw in 2007, 2008. That you can't hire new Canadians, you can't hire young people if there's no money for them to put them through trade school. The gentleman who spoke on trades, I hadn't thought about that. The amount of contribution that our businesses do, small businesses, to train people so that they can do what they do, I think is amazing. So these are all excellent points. So we need to start hitting them with it. I think we've been doing a pretty good job. But again, there is power in numbers, and the government ultimately, a government ultimately has to be accountable to its people. And I really do hope that the government is hearing what I've been saying. I really hope that they hear what you're saying. I certainly am going to be including a lot of the information we've heard tonight in my submission to the Minister of Finance. I think he already knows where my opinions are. But again, that's how the system is meant to work. So, again, if you can use social media, great. But if not, talk to your friends and family, ask them to do it. Because this country was great because our government is accountable.
You know, if you have a union and they don't like something, they'll walk off the job. How can small businesses walk off the job? How can accountants just say, we're not doing it anymore? How can doctors can walk off the job. But is there really a unison in Canada that people will pull together?
It's kind of hard to imagine, but it would be wonderful if small business just decided to have a one-day strike. Just close.
Someone has suggested we look at doing that it'd be for 2 hours.
2 hours.
And then anyone who says, okay, sorry, we're not open we can't sell you coffee because of this. Again, I'm not going to tell someone, how they should run their business. I want them to run a good business. But if they think that that's in their interest, I'd be very supportive of it. And act as an alternative.
115 spent on legal fees so that an Aboriginal kid can't get her teeth fixed.
Yes.
I have.
So the only thing that can slow them down is, first of all, when people start speaking out. And people are always going to expect the opposition, to raise these kinds of things. But it's when MPs start hearing from their constituents in the grocery store lands. That's where they start getting nervous. And if I will say, in Kelowna, when they had their caucus, I was in Winnipeg, but I talked to a number of people. I do have friends from all parties, and they said at the caucus meeting, there was a lot of concerns. So, and it's not just concerns about this, there's concerns about a whole host of issues. But then again, it comes down to leadership. Now, just mindful of the time, we're a little bit over, but I saw some other hands, and I'm going to answer really quick, and then we're going to let you all go. Please have some coffee, too.
What is the serious that Ways and Means motion to be brought
Well, I would hope that Minister Morneau would say that he would thoughtfully review what they've heard.
So we're very fortunate here to be with Dan Albas. Thank you again for putting on a wonderful event here and keeping it nonpartisan. Having White and Kennedy come in to give their perspectives from a professional tax point of view. I thought it was very well put together here. Great questions, and we obviously saw that everybody was, we got a lot of concerned local businesses here from all walks. But the one thing is, because I got a lot of this already on video in here, so I just want to focus on the one question that I asked you.
Yes.
A lot of taxes, they always say they got to raise taxes to address the debt, and we didn't have a debt when we were borrowing from the Bank of Canada, or all we had to do was at 0% interest. And back in '76, Pierre Elliott Trudeau stopped doing that.
Yeah.
So what?
Well, first of all, there is a court case that is kind of challenging what the Bank of Canada can do and can't, so I'm going to let